Welcome to the Tuesday Review. I'm Nathan, as always, joined by Callum and James in the studio. How you going, guys?
Yeah, not bad.
So it's been an eventful week. You know, we've had some internet issues at home. All of us in the studio. We've had some earthquakes. Maybe they're related.
Well,
not ours, but yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, how about that, huh? The earthquake. Did you feel the earthquake?
yeah, I did.
Yeah.
It felt big. Remember the one we had a couple of years ago? It felt bigger than that.
No.
It's because it was closer.
Yeah, but that's what I was
well.
gonna say. Is it was only 3.8, and the one a couple of years ago was 5.9,
Yeah.
but it was much closer because this time was
Yeah.
only in Sunbury.
Yeah.
Well, I was fast asleep, and then I woke up, and because we have a double-story house,
Yeah,
I was like wobble, 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 and I was like, oh my god.
yeah.
And I woke up, and I had to get up for work in like 3.5 hours.
Yeah.
Thanks, earthquake.
Oh, yeah.
It's not the only thing that's shaky, because tonight we're talking about
Oh, yeah.
Ant-Man Quantumania.
Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantum.
Quantumania, yeah.
Yeah,
More like Quantumpainia. am I
yeah,
right?
exactly.
Good thing. I wonder if there's a multiverse in which this film is good.
Unfortunately, we live in the darkest timeline, so
That's it.
we get earthquakes and
At least we got Cobra Kai until they cancelled it.
well, we got one more season at the end of the year. Then after that, I think it's time to
Well, look,
cancel Netflix.
they're bringing
Yeah.
everybody's favorite karate master back, Jackie Chan.
Oh, God.
For the
Yeah.
sequel to the Jaden Smith movie.
Yes.
Look, everyone was clamoring.
Let's talk about
for.
that another time.
Yeah, that's not... Yeah, we're getting off track here.
I really want to talk about Succession, but you guys haven't finished it.
Next week.
Internet issues were not to
Yeah,
blame,
yeah.
and also
Oh,
we
man.
lost our access to HBO and our
Chef's kiss times 1,000.
We'll talk about that next week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you can't tell, we're trying to delay the discussion about the actual movie.
We want to get sad later in the show, not at the beginning.
That's right.
All right. So, was this movie delayed very much?
Well, actually, I
No.
was thinking.
Was this a COVID movie?
No.
Yeah, it wasn't a COVID film.
No.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Because I was thinking, like, obviously it's a CG heavy movie. We're entering a CG heavy phase in the MCU, right? The cosmic phase.
Yeah.
Assumedly.
Well, I mean, it's always been CG heavy, but yeah, now more.
Space
Than,
and
even
all that
now
kind of
more
stuff.
than ever. Yeah.
Yeah.
And look,
It's also because we talked about it since the MCU started. CG's become even more of a thing.
Yeah.
Like even Shang-Chi, which didn't need any CG, had way too much.
And I thought some of the CG, or some of the staging of the CG, I should be more specific, was quite bad in this movie. And I was
Oh my
hoping it
God.
could
well,
be
the problem.
explained.
So let's start from the beginning.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about on this show about the last year, less than a year. We've stopped going to see superhero movies at the cinema.
Yeah, correct.
And Marvel movies obviously being the main one that I still like the Marvel movies. I still watch all the shows. I'm still up to date. However, there was a point after the pandemic where we're spending all this time and money going to the movies, seeing these MCU movies. They're all pretty much the same.
Yeah.
We're always disappointed, at least by parts of it, or that's just CGI crap.
Yeah.
And we're paying for Disney Plus anyway. So might as well wait a couple months and just watch it at home.
That's right.
And I think Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania is a perfect example of thank God we didn't go to the cinema and spend money on this. I'm so happy I watched this at home in the comfort of my own home.
I know.
And on my own time. And even then it was still a waste. But at least I'm so glad. Now, in saying that, I did go to the cinema and see Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. One, because James Gunn. Two, because a couple of friends were seeing it, and there were some other reasons. And that is a legitimately good movie and a great MCU film.
Yeah.
So I know it's been a while since that came out even, but if you're worried about the MCU movies and you're kind of doing what we're doing and going like, oh, I'm not really interested anymore, I might just wait for Disney Plus. Guardians is genuinely good.
Yeah, I've heard
and
it,
if you want to go to the movies for that, that's worth seeing at the movies. But Ant-Man... No. So we'll talk about Guardians when it comes out on Disney Plus. But that's an exception to the rule because even though MCU has always had that level of quality where they've never been DC levels of bad, even this one I think hasn't hit the DC lows.
No.
Close, but maybe not.
Yeah.
But I'm like, yeah, it's just become boring and samey. And Callum and I the other day we went to see Bowie's Afraid, and we're just like, it's nice to see movies at the movies that
an actual
weird film by a weird filmmaker.
Not a superhero movie, a film.
Not a CGI.
Not to denigrate superhero movies.
Yeah, and we like superhero movies, but we've talked about before. they're just CGI bloated,
That's right.
and they've become content for the Disney machine.
Film, yeah.
And this is the perfect example of a contenty film where it's just like, what is this even supposed to be?
Yeah,
this is just, you had to bang this out. You had to bang this out because it was on the schedule, not because you wanted
this
to.
This movie exists because they need to build up the Kangas.
Yeah, and they did a poor job. Should we go in just straight into spoilers because it's on Disney Plus?
That's
now.
right. Well, the first thing I want to mention is the most obvious part, and it's like the production design of this film.
Wait, are we going in spoilers now, or you want to say this
is just
before?
the general.
I was like,
before that.
Spoiler warning. I guess.
This is just a general.
No. Just before we get into that. Before, yeah. So no
spoilers yet. Yeah.
So my key problem with this film is that number one, and we'll go into this a bit later, but honestly, the script was atrocious.
Oh, it's terrible.
Like, there are things that they just whip out in this script, and I was like, where did that come from? That doesn't make sense.
It's like, you know how people complaining now about, AI taking over the job and there's a writer's strike? I'm like, this movie felt like it was written by AI.
No. We'll get to that later. There's other things. The second major issue I had with this film is, honest to God, some of the green screen they use in this film is some of the worst I have ever seen implemented in a Hollywood movie.
One of the biggest problems with this movie is because it's set almost entirely in the quantum realm, they have to make it look like
weird,
a weirdo.
That's
fine.
Strange planet with weird trees and stuff.
They could have done something more interesting. They could have done something more interesting than just having it being like in space, almost.
It just looks like a space movie. Yeah. But I just mentioned Guardians. Like that's a pretty good looking movie with a lot of practical effects. Yeah. And this movie, it definitely feels like they're just standing in front of a green screen for 2 hours straight.
So there's certain scenes in this film and certain shots where, due to the perspective, you can literally tell they're on a soundstage. So there's pictures where the green screen is so bad, there's no texture on the ground they're standing on. So they're standing on what should be a rocky surface, but it's like a flat texture.
We talked about it as well with almost every MCU movie, whereas they spread themselves so thin with the CG that even though they only should use it for certain things and they should put all their resources into those certain things, they use it from second one of the movie till literally the end credit, end of the end credits. And so they're spread so thin that all these we've talked about before, these poor digital artists who are overworked and underpaid, and we get garbage.
Yeah. So we
get a couple of nice looking things.
Their talents should be used, so they should be, me, the master filmmaker that I am. Yeah. They should be filming on dirt, on rock, and then the CG, the talented, the very talented CGI artists maneuver on, they use their skills to enhance what they're actually standing on.
Or you build a practical set like they used to back in the day when movies were quite good.
When movies were made.
Yeah, made practically. And then just in the background you have the green screen, the CG the back.
I just think that's why I mentioned before, the problem with the CG in this movie, it's almost the way the CG is staged.
That's right.
It's like, no, there are those scenes. I'm watching the movie, I'm like, man, this is Paul Rudd. He's standing in front of.
I'll try not.
He's literally just standing. Yeah,
I'll try to stop bringing up Guardians so much, but
it's relevant.
It's relevant because that movie has Guardians. All three Guardians movies have a lot of CGI. Yeah, but it's the way it's used. It's interesting.
James Gunn knows what he's doing.
Yeah, it's weird and it's interesting. Yeah, and this movie had so much CGI and yet it was also boring.
Yeah. So there's a scene where one of the characters is running.
Yeah.
And she's like, and it looks like she's running on the spot, and the background is moving past her.
We've talked about that with several superhero movies.
The second Wonder Woman movie, where it's like reprojection, she's running in front of it, and I was like,
we've talked about
ridiculous.
Before. They do it.
This film has that in spades.
Yeah, it's all.
I hate it.
Yeah,
I hate this movie. So I'm watching. So here's the thing.
It's bad.
Here's the thing. We'll get into spoilers soon. I'm assuming.
Yeah.
This movie doesn't hate the source material in the same way that Captain Marvel does.
Yeah,
Captain Marvel detested what it was building on. This movie doesn't hate its characters or its story. It just doesn't. It's just
very incompetent at doing what it's doing with the characters in the story.
So I don't hate it as much as Marvel, but I was like,
So
it's confounding.
Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania is a bad movie, not just a bad superhero movie, not just a bad MCU movie, but a bad movie. But I didn't hate it.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, it wasn't insulting. It was insulting to me as a cinema lover, but it wasn't insulting to me as in like, oh, you like comic book and superheroes? You're an idiot.
Yeah.
Like, I would watch Quantumania 24/7, 365 before I watch Black Widow again. Because Black Widow, like, killed my soul. You know? And probably a little bit with Captain Marvel as well. It's just like, oh, these people hate what they're doing and they don't know anything about what they're doing. Quantumania is more just incompetence and just factory filmmaking, like churn it out because it's on the schedule.
This could have been a good adventure.
Yeah, it's bad, but I didn't hate it. The worst I can say is I felt apathetic. Yeah, I was like, what is this?
So, hate's a strong word, but I'm watching it, and I feel like every couple of scenes there was some CG that was so bad it was embarrassing. And I say that like, but there's a broccoli guy. Yeah. And he looks like they did the concept art for him in Mid-Journey, which is not an insult.
Now they probably did.
No, and there's a scene...
Apologies to all the people who worked really hard on this movie. Probably all the Australians, because they do CG in Australia.
They're very talented. They're doing what they're told.
Yes.
Which is an important distinction, because nobody sets out to make crap-looking CG.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They do what they're told. They get notes just like anyone else. There's a scene where a character is sitting in a spaceship-like craft.
Also crunch. They're doing their best job.
That's what I was saying. They're overworked, underpaid.
And
they
the
don't
background,
have any, they're stretched too thin.
In the background, because, like I said, they didn't make this movie, they fabricated this film.
So, on a computer.
That's right. So, because it's like 90% animation, and then there's this character standing around in front of animation. Yeah. That's why I hate this film. Anyway, he's sitting in this ship, and in the background, which is obviously green screen, because everything in this film is green screen, you can see these trees. And I swear to God, the first thing I thought of was, that's AI generated. Because they had this weird warped look. And I'm like, it doesn't look like a human being
even if it wasn't AI, it was probably
poorly designed.
Some poor guy who had to copy and paste a bunch of the same trees.
Yeah, that's right.
Add a blur effect because they're flying past.
Oh, no, he was stationary.
Oh, that's even worse.
Yeah. And
is it because the windows of the spaceship were like force fields and they were wobbly?
I didn't notice.
I'm trying to defend.
No.
It's.
Why didn't they just film it in a forest or put fake trees there? Why did they have to be animated?
Build sets and they don't do that anymore.
It's a good thing they have millions and millions and millions of dollars, isn't it? And the best craftsmen Hollywood can give, the best carpenters, the best woodworkers, the best...
Yeah, for what?
I mean, look,
they don't use them.
This is a larger argument about, we'll say, capitalism.
I'm sorry. We rant a lot in this show.
You don't have $1 billion franchise by spending money.
We rant a lot.
You're right. That's what I said. It's just churning it out. It's like
we rant a lot, but this movie broke my brain. And we haven't even got to the characters yet.
Oh yeah, we haven't even scratched.
Some of the worst CG involves spoilers.
Too long don't read. It's like if you had a whole movie just based on Hulk's bobblehead from Infinity War. That's Quantumpainia.
the CG in the Hulkbuster.
That's right.
Yeah. Except like, but it's not just how bad it looks. It's the story is 2 hours of nothing.
Yeah, legit.
That's
nothing happens. Nathan said to me, something happens in the beginning and the end. Everything else is just getting the characters.
There's no emotional stakes. You don't learn anything new about the characters. They have no emotional...
Alan would have been here if he'd watched the movie, right?
Yeah.
And he texted me before saying, look, start the show with that. I mean, I haven't seen it. And I texted him back saying, look...
You didn't miss out.
You probably didn't need to watch the movie for this episode because there's nothing a lot really happens.
And even when we do go into spoilers... It doesn't really matter because this movie is a nothing movie.
That's right.
This movie, unfortunately, is
and especially
just a second introduction to the villain, essentially.
And especially because of real life circumstances surrounding it.
Who knows what's going to happen?
It's probably even less of an important movie because like a lot of things are going to change.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess moving into spoilers. I don't know. I guess technically this is a spoiler, but the villain is Kang.
Everyone knows Kang. He's in the trailer, but and they announced it before the movie came out. But yeah, we'll say spoiler warning for Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania.
Don't take it too serious.
But honestly, if you haven't seen the movie, you could probably still listen to this because
if you know Kang's a bad guy, you know.
Yeah, nothing that happens in the movie is really important, and at the end, nothing really happened.
If you have a basic idea who Kang is,
and if you know who Ant-Man is,
if you know who Ant-Man and who Kang is, you probably
even if you don't know who Kang is, he's a bad guy. That's all you need to know.
Yeah, and he conquers.
Watch the Loki show, and that's fine.
Yeah,
but even that was just setting him up, and now we see him for real, and they do a really bad job.
I mean, you could easily just not see this movie and be pretty okay for the next one.
I'm pretty sure. Again, like I said, we don't know what's going to happen when they inevitably change things. But I'm pretty sure before whatever the next Kang movie is, you could just watch a recap of this if you really had to.
I guess we'll start there. So, Kang's played by Jonathan Majors, and he has some quite serious allegations against him right now.
So Jonathan Majors, great actor. He's been killing it lately.
Oh, Creed 3, man, was an amazing.
He's a great actor. He's been he's now just in the last couple of years become really big.
Yeah.
And getting his name out there. So he gets the role as the one who remains.
Yeah, the
He
one
who remains.
He who remains. Yeah.
At the end of Loki, and that character was like keeping the timeline singular, so that all the multiple versions of himself wouldn't try to take over the multiverse. Then, what was her name? Sylvie?
I think so.
Sylvie kills the girl Loki, Lady Loki. She kills him and basically breaks open all the multiverses, all the different branching timelines, and Kang
proliferates.
All the multiverse versions of Kang now are unleashed on the multiverse and can take over. Yeah. And now this is setting up Kang the Conqueror, who's a big comic book villain, and who's supposed to be the new Thanos for the rest of this phase, this cosmic phase of the MCU. So Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania was supposed to be his like introductory movie, and it is, but it does a really bad job.
Yeah.
And even though Jonathan Majors is good, he's definitely going for a very Shakespearean villain.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily a bad thing, but he's definitely going for it.
The interesting thing about Kang is there's so many variations of him that it's not wrong. You know what I mean?
And that's it. We see that at the end.
Yeah. He's also, Kang in the comics is also a highly dramatic guy. Takes after Dr. Doom. So it's fine for him to play it that way because it's pretty accurate.
But unfortunately, because this movie's so bad, and because this is technically the first time we're seeing our new big bad, he doesn't really do anything the whole movie, and then he gets killed by some ants and sucked into a wormhole.
Sounds about right to me.
And I'm just like, wait, this is the new big bad guy. Like, he should win at the end, or he should be more of a threat.
And
because we didn't see they set Thanos up for 10 years.
This is a weird story point too, because we'll say in movie Kang sets himself up to be like, if you get rid of me, then nothing will stop all the other Kangs.
That's right.
But he's not even an anti. He's the villain in this movie. But they're also trying to play him as an anti-hero that's stopping all the other Kangs.
It's inferred that way.
I don't know what they're doing because it's so poorly written. And we already had He Who Remains, who was trying to keep the timelines.
Okay, and then all the other Kangs at the end are like, oh, they got rid of the one problematic Kang who couldn't harm us anyway. It's kind of like...
Look, presumably...
But it's like, if you're setting up they set up Thanos for 10 years.
Yeah.
And he was always like the puppet master, the guy behind the guy. And he was you never really saw him, you never really knew who, but then when he showed up in Infinity War,
purple chin.
Yeah, you showed up in Infinity War. First thing he does is kicks the hell out of the Hulk, showing how powerful he is, and then he like kills a whole bunch of guys, and he's like super powerful, and at the end he defeats the Avengers and kills half of the universe, and you're like, oh, this guy's a serious threat.
Yeah. So
instead, we've got the new villain going forward, Kang. He's in one movie. He stands around monologuing, and then some ants jump on him and he dies, and then Scott punches him into a black hole thing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? He's not a threat.
Yeah.
So he's not scary anymore. You just defeat Ant-Man, one of the minor MCU characters, maybe not a comic book character, but one of my minor MCU characters.
He's the comic relief guy of the Avengers. You know what I mean? It's like, not in a cool Spider-Man way.
No.
But in like a...
If anything, they should have introduced one of the alternate Kangs in this movie and killed him off, and then the real Kang shows up at the end. It's like, oh, you thought that guy was bad? Check me out.
So hypothetically, what makes you think this was the baddest Kang? What makes you think there's not a Kang that the other Kangs are afraid of?
Well, that's
and
a
he's
good
doing
point.
his own thing. So my theory is that either number one, there is like actual Kang is the villain. Number two, Doom is the villain, and he's the one who will like take up the mantle. And it could be played by Jonathan Majors too. If there's this whole kind of, they've played with canon before, so they could be like,
they can meld Doctor Doom into Kang and have like,
so you could have
Kang with the Doctor Doom outfit.
Or Doctor Doom was the first Kang.
Correct. Or alternatively, the actual villain is the Council of Kangs.
Well, so that's a good point, Callum, because at the end of the movie, we do see the Council of Kangs, and we see like a million different alternate versions of Kang.
And in the comics, they all scheme against each other. And,
so you're right. Instead of Kang the Conqueror being the big bad villain, it could technically be multiple versions, and Jonathan Majors could play it differently each time. So that would be interesting. Instead of one Thanos, you've got a million different
variations. Some big variation in costumes and
and voices and looks. So that's a good point.
Like
but I feel like the way they
definitely fumbled it.
Yeah, the way they introduced him here, he was
the definitive Kang.
Yeah, and also he doesn't seem Kang the Conqueror, who he is supposed to be the main one, quote unquote.
Yeah.
Two, also they set him up as not really a big threat. So even though there's more of him out there, the next time another one shows up, you're going to be like, well, what's the difference between him and the other guy?
So big spoilers for the Stinger at the very end of...
Is this the one I missed?
Yes, the one you missed.
Yeah, so I got the mid-spot...
You didn't wait till the end?
No, I was so depressed after the movie. I waited for the mid-stinger.
I understand, but
and then I should have realized it.
Hey, you can see little pictures on Disney Plus, so I just scanned through to see where the Stingers were.
I should have done that. I'll go back and watch it.
You literally could have just watched it.
Anyway... So the sting at the very end was really interesting because to me it infers to me at least it's a sepia looking scene. Again, I'm sorry to reiterate, major spoiler warnings for the Stingers, which we all as MCU fans hold sacred. Mm-hmm. There's a sepia toned scene with set in the past with Loki and
Owen Wilson's character.
Yes, Agent Mobius, yeah.
Yeah.
And they're in the past or whatever, looking at some guy give a science presentation about time, and it's our boy Jonathan Majors.
Yeah.
As
so they're setting up Loki season 2.
Correct. But what I found was interesting was Mobius goes, "You're sure this is the guy? He doesn't seem very scary." And Loki responds, he whispers, "He is." And I'm like, so that's the inference is that that's the original OG Kang in the past. So I'm like, maybe he's like Doom or Kang or whatever the definitive version is, because we've taken care of one version of Kang. But I'm interested to see, is Loki season 2 going to set up like Kang with a capital K Kang? So the problem is they already dropped Kang the Conqueror in Ant-Man, so they fumbled that. So what I'm hoping now is we get like a Doom scenario. So they're going to lure everyone into a false sense of security, like all of us neckbeards on the show being like, "Oh,
angry,
look at
got
them.
defeated by ants."
They fumbled Kang, ha ha ha. The real villain might have been Doom all along, which they'll introduce in Loki.
I like that because...
That's fair enough.
I like that because
I think we're giving him too much credit.
Probably. Because then they could introduce a Kang and they say, "Who are you?" Kang in Doom costume could return him as, "I am Doom," and like, you know what I mean? Don't call him Doctor Doom. Being like, "I am Doom."
That's a mic drop of a stinger.
Like, just like that's a stinger. Like he comes in full regalia,
and then set him up as the Thanos for the next few.
Yeah, he's like Kang Prime, like he's Doom.
So now the bigger problem, which we were alluding to before, the bigger problem on top of that is Jonathan Majors has had some pretty big allegations against him and has been charged with.
I believe so. Obviously innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah, I don't know how that's going to turn out.
Not commenting on that.
I think they've already filmed Loki season 2, so they probably can't cut him out of that. But it's going to be interesting to see if they just recast him.
Marvel is not the same as DC. DC will double down and be like, "Our boy Ezra Miller, don't care if he's abducting kids in Hawaii, do whatever he needs to do. We're secretly flying him in for reshoots, even though there's warrants out for his arrest. Let's do this, guys." Marvel can't take that kind of
hit. Do you think he's going to be on the red carpet with ankle monitor?
Oh man, but like, you know, obviously DC does what it...
They cast him as the Flash because he knows how to evade the
cops. He knows how to run from the cops.
I think, you know, obviously Marvel has a little bit more we'll say, pride
Integrity.
than DC. That's
Well,
kind
we'll
of-
see. We'll see.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. It's interesting that a character who has multiple versions, but who all look like Jonathan Majors, if they have to recast him, it's like
You know
they
what?
have to recast them all.
I don't think they will recast
And
him.
it's just
I think-
or are they going to play with the multiverse thing and be like, oh, he looks different
Nah.
because something
I
happened in the
reckon-
timeline?
I reckon they'll just take the hit. Unless he ends up in prison and then they
It
have
depends
to
how
recast him.
bad how bad this turns out.
Because like,
I
think about it from a business perspective. You're betting your horses. You're putting all your horses on this guy or whatever. What are you supposed to do?
I mean,
but at a certain point, I mean,
It
these
goes
big
back to a
companies
recent-
don't have morals. But at a certain
No.
point, it depends. It really depends on how his case develops. And
I think obviously it goes back to we talked about this in a recent episode too in the Fast and Furious. It goes back to we talked about Fast and Furious 10 recently. It goes back to the Brian problem. Where it's like they should have recast him earlier, like when it happened, and now they've kind of got themselves.
Well, yeah.
in, a bit
Well,
of
in
a
that case,
hole,
they probably should have killed him off,
or
but
killed the character
yeah, it
off.
would have been
Yeah,
sad.
but obviously they can't kill Kang off this early, and he's
Yeah.
like, I'm like, do you recast? Do you not recast? People are so allergic to recasting actors these
yeah,
days.
I know. Yeah, they are.
I think.
Just have at the start of the presentation. Just have Kang will now be played by X.
No, you don't
And
even
the
need
smiling
that. Like,
portrait of
I
the
mean,
actor.
Don
No.
Cheadle was, you don't need to mention
No,
it.
no, you don't need to mention
They've already recast
you
once,
just,
yeah.
and I think they've done it with other roles. Like,
But it's almost I feel like
just
it's almost
do it.
anathema now. They don't do it. They
Certainly
don't-
with high-profile
people-
characters, yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, it depends on the character. Like with The Witcher, it's just like that show was already bad,
yeah,
and then now they're like getting rid of the main actor, and I'm like, yeah, I'm done.
Yeah.
But if they recast one of the smaller roles, I mean, Game of Thrones, they recast a lot of the smaller roles. Some of them were good, some of them were bad. It just depends, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, recasting
especially
Kang,
in
as you
this
said, Kang
but
is
it's
the big
in this
one. Yeah.
circumstance. If they recast him just because,
I think
no. But if
yeah.
they recast him because he's actually a huge piece of shit, which
or
allegedly
he's in
I don't
prison,
know,
he's literally unable
or
to
he's
film.
literally unable
Yeah.
to do it.
It's
yeah.
a good thing they film entirely on green screens, isn't it?
Yes, it's,
They
They
can
can
just
just
put up,
deep fake him.
They can just put up green screens in the set.
AI Jonathan Majors.
It's
Such a
interesting
shame
because
because he's such a good actor.
They could have done this with Thanos, right? Because he had that CG overlay. They
That's
could have
the other
fixed
thing,
it.
yeah.
Jonathan Majors as Kang weirdly has less prosthetics, less CG.
Less CG, yeah.
It's
I
like,
will say Kang's actual physical costume
it was pretty good.
was good. The
Yeah.
mask,
Yeah.
I would have
But
preferred
the-
an actual metallic mask. But
yeah, I
it
think
is
that would
what
have been
it
cool.
is.
Even like Iron Man, where it like just flips over, it kind of
Yeah.
morphs over his head. But
So
Yeah.
it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Kang, the
Yeah.
actor behind him, and
Yeah,
the character
and the
itself
character.
moving
Because-
forward.
because this was supposed to be the big reveal of Kang, and then only a couple years from now they were supposed to do Avengers: The Kang Dynasty, and I'm like,
We're a bit far
I
away
don't
from
think they
that,
can pull
yeah.
that off in such a quick
No, they
amount
haven't.
of
They
time.
haven't laid any of that groundwork.
Yeah, but also they are churning out the shows and movies really quickly, and that is a problem. They need to. They're doing what DC did to try to catch up to Marvel. They're rushing it.
I think the
They
problem
need
is
to go back and set up Kang for 10 years before they do the next Avengers.
they also need to
movie.
slow down, right? Because this is the problem for viewers like us who are only watching on Disney are going to find is that the show's going to come out. I'm not going to watch the show because I haven't watched the movie that I want to watch before I watch the show. Like, even though it probably won't make a difference. For instance,
I
I,
think
want
it
to wait for
doesn't-
Guardians before I watch Secret Invasion, right? And
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I mean, it really depends because like some things you can watch and some things you probably can't watch. But yeah, it's just for us. It's just delayed a couple. Everything's delayed a couple months.
it's all 3 or 4 or 5, depending on how painful Disney want to be about it. Because Ant-Man could have come out a lot sooner than it did on
It was
Disney.
only a couple months.
No, it was longer than that.
Nah.
Yeah, it was. We looked it up.
It came out end of Feb. March, April.
No, there was. I'm not sure about that. I'll have to look it up. There was some.
Look it up. I don't think it was that long.
No, well, there was much longer than the previous movie to have come out.
The
in
delay, yeah, you mean?
The delay was a lot longer than the previous Marvel movie,
Maybe.
Doctor Strange.
Hmm.
Doctor Strange had a much shorter window between theatrical release and Disney Plus release than Ant-Man did.
What about Black Panther? That was
No,
only a
I'm not
couple
sure about-
months.
That was only a couple months, but Ant-Man took longer.
I
It
don't
did.
know.
Maybe they wanted to.
Anyway,
Maybe they
we'll-
wanted to milk it more at the theaters.
Yeah, and that's going to be a problem if they're going to keep churning stuff
Because they
out.
probably get
I can't-
a loss of money when they put it on Disney Plus because everyone's not going to the movies
Yeah.
to see
Yeah.
it.
But then again, 8 weeks is standard run as well, right? So it's like they're not playing it at least less at theaters, then they're not going to miss that much money after that period. Anyway,
I'll try to milk it for
Yeah.
all it's worth. I think another big problem with Kang is like Scott, Ant-Man, has no real emotional connection or motivation to be angry at Kang. And so they have this big fist fight at the end. And I'm like, I don't care about this. Scott doesn't even know who this guy is. If anything, Janet should have had a fight with him because she's the one who was like...
They set up, I actually have a history with this guy because reasons.
And that's another reason this movie sucks, is because they at the start of the film, they get sucked into the quantum realm. And then Janet's like, oh, BTW, I forgot to tell you, while I was stuck in the quantum realm for 30 years...
I became a freedom fighter.
I wasn't alone down here. There's like civilizations of people and cities and vehicles and governments. And I accidentally helped this guy who turned out to be Kang and tried to take over the quantum realm. And I became a freedom fighter against him until you rescued me. And I'm like, this is some... I know Marvel and comic books do a lot of retconning, but I'm like, this is some bad retconning bullshit.
Mm-hmm. I feel like they're also leaning too much into the, we have to be in space, there has to be the cosmic element to it.
That's the other thing. Like,
why can't they just be riding water bears?
Because it's in the quantum realm, it's just like, I know there are little teeny people who live down there, but I'm like, I don't care about anything that's going on.
Yeah,
it's going to be explored once.
Yeah, it's like we're never going to revisit this.
We essentially get a recap of something that should have been a miniseries TV show.
I don't think they should have done this movie. The fact that Ant-Man got a trilogy at all is kind of amazing because like no one remembers the second movie, and. Like I love Paul,
I'm like, what was in the second movie?
I love Paul Rudd, but his talents are wasted as Ant-Man because he's playing the straight man when he's usually good at the comedic role.
Ant-Man works best as a heist movie.
And at least the other movies had his crew, Luis and was Kurt, and then who was the rapper? T.I. was in it.
Yeah.
And it's like, at least they were funny and they had banter.
They had dynamic.
Those guys aren't in this movie, and so there's just nothing in this movie, and even the jokes in this movie, none of them are funny.
They don't land.
Not one. Nothing in this movie
flat,
is funny.
just like the film in the green screens.
Yeah.
And we get that weird Gandalf moment with the ants that I didn't like.
That's my big problem with this film.
The sun comes over the
Douglas
hill.
the White, and he's just like,
So my big problem with this film is I can imagine the screenwriters who get paid handsomely, or I should say maybe the producers who had to write this film because their writers were like, this is dumb, we're not doing this.
Oh, do you mean the AI they got to do it?
Yeah. They're like, how do we save the day? We have the characters fighting Kang in an army. We need someone to help out the characters. I can imagine some dude sitting there being like, ants. Where do they come from? Time dilation. Who cares? Get them in there. So for listeners...
But it's like, it is Ant-Man. So ants factoring into the movie makes sense.
Yeah.
And they factored into the first two movies. But at this point in the movie, it's like a Deus Ex Machina where the big bad villain's winning, and then
all of a sudden, all
these giant ants come over the thing.
The most insulting part is that they were ants that had experienced time dilation, which turned them into a Type 2 civilization, as smart or capable as like a science fiction race in and of themselves. So they come in with their like spaceships and their weapons and their super science.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, what on earth? Who thought this was a good idea? Because let me tell you, ants as a spacefaring civilization, depending on how it's done, it could be cool.
I mean, it could be cool.
In this film, it's
I just don't care because it happens right at the end as like I said,
Also,
Deus Ex Machina. They're just like smart ants. They had thousands of years of evolution over 10 minutes.
It happens real quick.
Yeah.
Why not have quantum ants? There are ants already there.
Yeah.
He fixes a helmet up. I can tell these ants.
Yeah, I've got some little buddy. Every now and again in the movie, Michael Douglas' character, he's like, I've got some new little buddies. They're coming to help us. I'll be
quantum
here.
Ants.
What do you? The quantum ants. They're a bit different Earth ants, but they still
communicate.
They communicate the same way.
There's all quantum pheromones. That's right. There's all kinds of civilizations in life, like we said before.
Yeah.
Why can't you just?
Which also makes Janet's whole thing of like being stuck alone for 30 years. Like now she's just like she was just
partying sometimes, fighting other times,
getting it on with Bill Murray.
Friends become enemies, become friends, friends become enemies. Janet's richer for the experience.
Yeah.
But my point is, like some of the civilizations, I should say, some of the aliens, for lack of a better word, in this film.
Yeah, they're basically just aliens.
They look terrible. The broccoli man looks bad.
Yeah.
There's a robot that looks rubbery.
There's a couple of cool guys in the background with little, like, tentacle faces. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of okay. But most of it's just bad. Also, yeah, Kang's army is just a bunch of faceless. Are they robots?
They look like robots. Yeah.
Yeah. Like it's just the whole thing is just
lame. It's just lame.
And I mean,
I don't know. Look, we'll be right back after this quick break. Yeah. You're back on the Tuesday review. Whining all things Ant-Man Quantumania.
Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania.
Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania.
That's another problem I had. I remember when Ant-Man and the Wasp came out, and I was like, the Wasp is hardly in it.
Yeah.
Like, it's still an Ant-Man movie. And this movie is the same. It's just an Ant-Man movie, and she, like, shows up a couple times. Like, if you're going to call it Ant-Man and the Wasp, actually get some writers in there who know how to make a buddy movie and know how to make a relationship movie.
Yeah, they kind of split them up for the whole movie anyway.
And she doesn't really do... I mean, I know she's a badass action, but she doesn't do a lot.
Until the end of the movie where she kind of saves the day just a little bit.
Yeah.
And then she goes
But anyway, and then now they introduced Cassie, who has her own Ant-Man suit. And I guess they're setting her up because now they're trying to do the Young Avengers thing.
So what are they going to call the next one? Ant-Man and the Wasp and...
Did she get a name at the end? Ant-Girl?
Hope?
Wasp? Yeah.
Ant-Man and the Wasp and Ant-Hope.
Ant-Girl.
But
like so at the end of this movie was originally supposed to end with Scott getting stranded in the quantum realm because the portal he defeats Kang, the portal closes, and it's like, oh no, what are we gonna do? And it's just like it immediately reopens and everyone's like, oh, come back, and he comes back, and I'm like, he goes to. And then the movie like goes to the end, and he's just in his normal hometown. Yeah. He's walking down the street, and there's like a voiceover, which is another bad part of the writing of this movie. He's just like, "Oh, so everything worked out in the end. We defeated Kang." He's like, "Oh, but did I? Oh, yeah, no, I definitely did. But what if he was right about
the multiverse,
holding the other Kangs back? No, everything's fine." And this is the end. I'm like, that is such a weird ending.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, what the hell?
It was a comic relief ending, right? Because you're meant to be like, Ant-Man's having anxiety, haha.
No, but it's just like, what is this movie? What are they trying to do? It's make literally, they popped it out because they're like, it's on the schedule, we have to introduce Kang.
Right. Yeah, they announced it, so now they have to make it.
Nothing happens in this movie. There's no character development. Yeah. There's like one scene between Cassie, Scott, Scott's daughter, and Scott, and the natives of the quantum realm are like, please, we need help to fight Kang. And Scott's like, I don't want to get involved. And I was like, what?
How awkward was her?
It's such a weird thing for a
broadcast
superhero to say. Just because the writers were like, we have to have some drama here. So he's going to turn a blind eye until his daughter is in danger, and then he's going to learn to join the fight.
Yeah. So that's
kind of like privileged white idiot wrote this garbage. Like, I don't understand their point of view. I think they're just incompetent.
Yeah, another issue I have with this film, with the rebellion angle, is so all the natives are trying to rise up against Kang, but they're not unified. And it's not until Cassie?
Yeah.
It's not until Cassie goes on a broadcast in Kang's tower, and it's like, actually, guys, we should rise up and, let's fight together.
Duh. And then I didn't think of that before.
And then suddenly, all of the aliens are like, yeah, we've never heard that kind of charisma before. Yeah. Let's band up together. And I'm like, so you're telling me the freedom fighters who've been trying to convince people to take up arms for like, I don't know, years and years, couldn't do
decades.
it. But some chick who's like, oh, come on, guys, let's do it. Suddenly, everyone's like, yeah.
Yeah. No, it's ridiculous. It's so poorly written. And, like, I didn't care about any of the native...
And there was no emotion in the broadcast either. It was just kind of this flat...
And I'm like, I don't remember any of their names. None of it, like, it was just like, they're not characters.
No, they're not.
It's like they're little...
and speaking of characters...
Do we have to talk about MODOK?
Yeah, so MODOK, a famous comic book villain, a big guy in a guy with a big deformed head guy in a floating chair. Famous villain.
Yeah, he's a famous Marvel Comics villain.
Only designed for killing.
MODOK. He's like basically a big head in a floating.
Yeah, and he's like a science-based supervillain.
Yeah, he's really smart. He's got such a big head because he's so smart, but he just likes to kill things. And he's got like big guns on his missiles, and he's got big guns on his chair that he floats around. He's always been a stupid-looking villain.
Yeah.
But the way they interpreted him for live action in the MCU...
Super literal, but to a point.
No, but not even literally, it's like in the worst way possible.
Yeah, and it looks bad.
Yeah. So I know he looks a bit silly in the comic books, but if you're going to adapt him for live action, you've got to do something.
Yeah.
And the fact that what they did do
there is a way
was green lit and was okayed
So-
by probably several people.
Yeah. There's a point in the film where I said to Nathan, is my quality dropping or is it just the way MODOK looks? And Nathan was like, oh yeah, he just looks that way.
No.
Because it's so blurry and like flubbery looking.
Yeah, it's so Corey Stoll played the villain in the first Ant-Man movie, and then Scott like blew him up and he got squished into the quantum realm. And he comes back in this movie, Kang turns him into MODOK. I'm like, that's fine, that could work. But they turn him into a comic relief character where they awkwardly digitally composite
his face onto
Corey Stoll's face onto, and it's a giant, just basically, you know those memes where they stretch the face out?
Yeah.
So it's just like, and it's like zoomed in, so it's like low poly.
Yeah. Low resolution.
It's like that. And then the whole movie, he's basically comic relief.
His face is a lower resolution than the rest of the film.
Yeah.
So it looks weird.
And it's like he's basically just comic relief where he looks stupid and he's just stupid the whole movie. And then Cassie beats him up, is like, please stop being a dick. And he's like, okay. Yeah. And so at the end, he suicide bombs Kang and he's like, I'm an Avenger now, yay. And then he dies. Yeah. And I'm like, this isn't funny.
No.
It looks stupid. I know.
Character writing aside, there should have been a way to design the character that didn't look like that.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like people have literally online have just like done a quick Photoshop where they've lowered his eyebrows so he's like more mean looking and made his eyes white and made his mouth a bit more frowny, you know, with some lines. And it looks fine.
But they just superimposed the dude's face.
They literally
largely,
just took a photo on their iPhone of Corey Stoll's face front on. And then just awkwardly digitally pasted it onto a giant CG head.
And on top of that, he's also an ineffective villain. Every time he tries to do something, he fails. There's not one point where anyone is properly threatened by him.
MODOK is supposed to be, like terrifying. And there is that bit where he does swoop in and kills a bunch of guys. But it's just like so quick and then he takes his thing off. They could have just left the mask on. It would have been fine. That was kind of cool looking. But just awful. Like, the fact that they okayed that and thought it was fine.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm
at a loss. Like I said, this movie broke my mind.
We'll talk about when Guardians comes on Disney Plus. But Guardians is a good character piece. It's a good action movie. And it's a movie that has stuff going on and has a good villain and has good character moments and story. Quantumania is literally just a piece of content that they had to get out. It's very workmanlike. I mean, it happened when the first Ant-Man came out. Edgar Wright was supposed to do it. He left over creative differences. They got Peyton Reed in. And I think Peyton Reed, who did 1, 2, and 3, Ant-Man 1, 2, and 3, he's just a director for hire. Yeah. No offense to him, but he just does what the execs tell him. He churns it out. There's nothing special or unique about these films. There's nothing that's going to be worth revisiting. There's nothing that sticks out to...
And for the content fans, it's probably great. You know what I mean? It's another CG-heavy piece of content for them to consume.
But even then, in terms of like setting up Kang as the next... it's the next Marvel thing, so we have to have... It's just like, you can probably skip it and watch a recap.
Yeah. But I was thinking about this when I was watching it, and I know this is going to sound harsh, but with a film like this, which is like 80% CGI, 80% green screen, really heavy on animation, at what point do we say, okay, well, maybe some movies should be entirely animation? You know, I know that sounds dumb, but I'm watching Paul Rudd run on the spot in front of a green screen, and I'm like, why couldn't they just do this DreamWorks style? At least that way it would look nice. Because the way they're approaching it is made for animation. They're not putting real people in front of crap and then being like, act like there's something there.
If this movie was exactly the same, but everything was animated, including the human figures, it's still bad, but at least you could be like, oh, that was kind of a fun kids animated movie, whatever.
Yeah.
But because it's quote unquote live action.
Barely.
Yeah. And it looks so flat. And I mean, this goes back to a problem I had when Avatar came out, 13, 14 years ago, whenever it was. I'm like, it's an animated movie.
Yeah.
It's 99% animated.
That had
and
novelty,
there's a couple of scenes with actors in front of a green screen. Yeah. So people pretending, because it's photorealistic, quote unquote, people pretend it's live action. It's not. It's an anime film. And there's nothing wrong with animated films. They're not lesser because they're animated. But let's stop pretending.
That's right.
And one of the reasons movies aren't as good as they used to be is because they just animate everything.
Yeah.
And unlike fully animated films like Incredibles or Spider-Verse, they don't stylize things because they're trying to be realistic. Yeah. And they fail at being realistic because CG doesn't look real, and they overuse it and they stretch themselves too thin.
Yeah, that's right.
So if you're going to make a live action comic book movie, make it live action. Build sets.
Exactly. Choose something. Choose one.
Yes, costume. And yes, you have to use CGI for certain things, but don't use it for every little second.
Yeah. It's like they don't understand that you can hire carpenters to build things.
That's the thing, though. It's like they do, but you can't even tell because
it's CGI overall.
Yeah, it's all CGI'd over it, and like they might just do like one corner of something, and
it's like there's some guy in an office block somewhere who's in charge of like Marvel, and he's addicted to CG. He just
we've talked about it many times. Every time one of these movies comes out, we talk about it. It's
I know.
Just
I feel
it's
bad
the way
repeating
things are
myself,
done
but
now.
This movie just upset me more than other MCU movies because it's just
because the whole thing is
at least with Captain Marvel, my pet hated the MCU. At least they drove real cars and there were real buildings.
But even that had too much CGI and wasn't like the action wasn't good.
Yeah, I know, but at least it was kind of there were some locations that were
because
real.
it was set mostly on Earth, so they could walk around. Yeah,
yeah. At least they don't.
Yeah, no. But I mean, like.
I said to Nathan, this is unrelated, but I'm like, and people say Eternals is the bad one.
That's why I'm so surprised. Is like people saw Eternals, were like, this is the worst movie. They saw Love and Thunder and like, this is the worst movie. And Love and Thunder has problems. It's not great.
Yeah.
But why were those the ones that people picked on? And people watch Black Widow and go, this is fine. And people watch the end of Shang-Chi and go, this is fine. And even Quantumania, I feel like isn't getting as much hate as it should be.
Because it sticks closer to the standard
formula,
bread and butter,
Yeah, that's right. The people who hated Eternals are probably like, that was a good one.
Yeah. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, Quantumania is a perfect example of why we're not going to the cinema to see these anymore.
Yeah, I'm glad I didn't pay money to see this. Watch it on Disney Plus, I guess.
But even then, only if you're a really big fan of the MCU and want to be caught up. But other than that, I think, like I said, Guardians 3 is definitely worth seeing at the cinema and is a worthy addition to the MCU and just a good movie overall. So there are bright spots every once in a while. But that's also almost like an exception to the rule because James Gunn and...
He leaving.
But now he's gone to DC. So now DC is going to become the good stuff and Marvel's going to become the bad stuff. That's
so
what's
weird,
happening?
Isn't it? It's funny because we had a conversation a while ago where it was like the Suicide Squad reboot/sequel thing they did was pretty good. It wasn't the worst. It was
okay, yeah.
And then apparently the Peacemaker show's pretty good as well.
Yeah.
And then it's like this is all stuff that James Gunn's touched. And so, he's personally directing and writing the Superman movie. And he was really hesitant because it had to be the right script and he wanted to approach the character. And he's talking on Twitter with people and people link him some important comic to them. Yeah. And it's out of print. And he's like, let me see if I can get that back in print because I like that one too.
Yeah.
And I'm like, are we really going to get a DC turnaround? Because I don't want to hope. You know what I mean? We've been down this road before.
Yeah, I'm not getting my hopes up.
But if anyone can do it.
I think he'll do a good job, but I mean...
But Hollywood doesn't seem to understand Superman. Not since the 70s.
I think James Gunn understands him, but whether in modern day filmmaking they can...
translate that.
And especially because this is the first kind of new DC movie... these movies just they end up falling into the same problems.
Yeah.
But yeah,
comic book curse.
Yeah, it's just we've talked about it all before on previous episodes, but
yeah,
it's just the same problems every time.
I reckon that's all for tonight, boys.
Yeah,
we're sad enough.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Please like and share the Tuesday Review Facebook page, Instagram, and the Twitter at Tuesday Review AU.
Delete Twitter. Instagram is our main place now where you can follow us, but we still have the Twitter for now and the
Wade
Facebook.
through the toxic waters like me.
Yeah.
Just waiting for Blue Sky to come out and maybe we'll move there.
Yeah.
We'll be back next week. Adios, cousins.